But he probably never imagined he'd be upstaged by a feather. Anne, the Princess Royal, is King Charles's younger sister. She has been the Colonel of the Blues and Royal's British Army Regiment since 1998 and was later granted the title of Gold Stick in Waiting for Charles.
Princess Charlotte has been in the spotlight since birth, and it seems that some of her few chances to relax come when she spends time with her grandmother.
What began as a royal celebration inside Windsor Castle quickly turned dark. At the banquet, Princess Charlotte, only 10 years old, sat at the table, smiling, not knowing that someone was secretly trying to harm her reputation. Princess Anne, known for always protecting the family, noticed what nobody else saw.
Anne, the Princess Royal, is King Charles's younger sister. She has been the Colonel of the Blues and Royal's British Army Regiment since 1998 and was later granted the title of Gold Stick in Waiting for Charles.
A hidden plan that could have ruined Charlotte's future. Overcome with emotion, Anne broke down in tears as she rushed to protect her niece from Camilla's scheme. This was more than just a family fight. It was betrayal behind royal smiles, showing how power can be used in cruel ways. But in that moment, Anne proved her loyalty by standing up when it mattered most. So, what really happened that night? And why did Anne's tears change everything for Charlotte's future? Let's uncover the full story together. Whispers of doubt. It was the perfect storm, an event that nearly ended in disaster. Princess Charlotte's first big public appearance was meant to be a dream. The palace had chosen her to represent the royal family at a children's charity event in London. It was planned as a gentle start to her royal life, meeting a small group of children, handing out flowers, and sharing a few kind words. Everything seemed harmless. What could possibly go wrong? But Princess Anne had her doubts. She had been watching the preparations closely for weeks, and something felt off. She noticed staff members acting uneasy, hushed conversations that stopped when she entered a room, and sudden changes to the event schedule that no one could clearly explain. With her decades of experience, Anne knew the difference between harmless nerves and something more dangerous. Her suspicion grew stronger when she overheard two event organizers talking about Charlotte's big day. At first, it sounded like they wanted to make it unforgettable in a good way. But as she listened more carefully, Anne realized their words carried a darker meaning. Determined to uncover the truth, she began asking casual questions and double-checking details others might have overlooked. What she found would confirm her worst fears. Before she acted, Anne spent hours reflecting on the lessons of the past. She remembered how, as a young royal herself, she had been pushed into situations she wasn't ready for, judged harshly for every misstep. Those memories weren't just painful, they were warnings. She knew that even one public failure could cling to Charlotte for life, shaping how the world viewed her long before she was old enough to define herself. This wasn't just about a single event. It was about protecting a child's entire future from being rewritten by the ambitions of others. Anne also reached out quietly to a few longtime allies within the palace, individuals whose loyalty had been tested through past crises.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Their subtle warnings confirmed what she already suspected. This was not a simple mistake, but a deliberate attempt to use Charlotte as a pawn in a larger game of influence. The thought that betrayal could be growing inside the very walls of the monarchy unsettled her more than any outside threat ever had. A cruel discovery. What Anne uncovered left her shaken. The entire event had been turned into a trap, carefully designed to damage a child's confidence and future. What was supposed to be a gentle introduction to royal duties had been twisted into a setup meant to humiliate Princess Charlotte in front of the world. Every detail had been manipulated. Charlotte's dress was altered to be too long, almost guaranteeing she would stumble on the steps. The flowers chosen for her to present were made into heavy bouquets, far too difficult for small hands to hold. Even the microphone had been tampered with, adjusted so her young voice would sound faint and uncertain. But the worst discovery came when Anne found the hidden event notes. Charlotte was expected to deliver a short speech, but the script had been secretly changed. Instead of simple words, it was filled with complex terms no child her age could pronounce. The plan was cruelly simple. If she struggled, photographers would capture every stumble, every look of confusion, and turn them into headlines questioning her readiness for royal life. The photographers themselves had been given instructions: where to stand, what to capture, and how to make Charlotte appear small and overwhelmed. The goal was to create lasting images that would follow her forever, casting doubt on her ability to handle royal duties. That was the moment Anne's heart broke. She locked herself in her office and wept, not for herself, but for the innocent child who had no idea what awaited her. Anne had endured decades of challenges as Princess Royal, but nothing had prepared her for the cruelty of adults plotting against a 9-year-old girl. She thought of Charlotte's excitement in the days leading up to the event, and it only made the betrayal harder to bear. Princess Charlotte had been looking forward to the event with unshakable joy, practicing her speech, choosing her favorite dress, and proudly talking about representing her family. What she didn't know was that people she trusted were secretly planning to embarrass her in front of the world. The charity event was only a day away, leaving Princess Anne less than 24 hours to stop a plan that had taken months to prepare. She couldn't turn to William and Catherine, who were overseas, and involving King Charles risked drawing attention and alerting the plotters. Anne realized she would have to face this alone, just as she had done during many past family crises.
Princess Diana left the royal family in a blaze of scandal just as Sophie was entering the fold.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
She had seen too many young royals crushed by pressure and media cruelty, and she refused to let the same happen to Charlotte. Her first move was to call an urgent meeting with the event coordinators. Pretending it was just a routine check, she carefully inspected every detail. With her sharp eye, she spotted each trap hidden in the arrangements. The coordinators tried to explain away the changes as harmless updates, but Anne wasn't fooled. As she dug deeper, the truth became even more disturbing. The sabotage wasn't coming from outsiders, it was being planned inside the royal household itself. People sworn to protect the family, trusted with their most private matters, were secretly working against a child. Worse still, Anne uncovered signs that the plan had approval from higher up the royal chain. Someone who should have been protecting Charlotte was instead orchestrating her downfall. The conspiracy reached into the very heart of the monarchy, involving figures Anne had trusted for years. Anne wrestled with a haunting question. Why would people inside the palace risk so much to sabotage a child? The answer became clearer the deeper she dug. It wasn't about Charlotte personally. It was about what she represented. To some, she symbolized a new era of openness, compassion, and connection to ordinary people. To others, that vision was terrifying. They feared a monarchy that might one day step too far from its old traditions. To them, weakening Charlotte early was a way to keep the balance of power frozen in place. For Anne, this was more than sabotage. It was a test of survival for the next generation of royals. She knew history too well. Scandals and deliberate character attacks had destroyed promising heirs before they had the chance to lead. Protecting Charlotte wasn't just about saving a child from embarrassment. It was about preserving the credibility of the crown itself. What made the betrayal sting most was the motive. These were not strangers with grudges, but insiders who feared the very change Charlotte represented. To them, the young princess symbolized a softer, more modern monarchy, one that threatened traditions they clung to. In their eyes, sabotaging her confidence was a way to stall progress. To Anne, it was proof that fear, not loyalty, could corrupt even those sworn to serve. Princess Charlotte was filled with excitement. She had practiced her lines, chosen a dress she loved, and proudly spoke about how happy she was to represent her family. What she didn't realize was that people close to her were secretly preparing to turn her big moment into a disaster. The charity appearance was set for the very next day, leaving Princess Anne with only hours to stop a scheme that had been quietly unfolding for months. Asking William and Catherine for help was impossible. They were away on royal duties abroad. Turning to King Charles could risk exposing the plan too soon. Anne knew this battle had to be fought on her own, just as she had quietly handled so many royal crises in the past. She had watched other young royals buckle under pressure and ruthless media coverage, and she refused to let history repeat itself with Charlotte. Anne's first step was to confront the organizers under the guise of a last-minute review. Calm on the surface but alert to every detail, she noticed subtle adjustments meant to trip Charlotte up. The staff brushed off her concerns as harmless changes, but Anne's instincts told her otherwise. The deeper she looked, the more chilling the truth became. The plot wasn't coming from outsiders, it was rooted within the royal household itself. People long trusted with the family's secrets were part of the plan to sabotage a child.
While the 7-year-old was stoic for the service, the young girl's actions afterward pulled at the heartstrings of many viewers. At one point, Princess Charlotte appeared to be crying in a photo taken after the Queen's funeral service.
Even worse, Anne uncovered signs that the order came from someone high within the monarchy, someone who should have been Charlotte's shield, not her enemy. The betrayal reached further than Anne ever expected, striking at the very core of the royal family. Anne quietly arranged for trusted photographers to be positioned where it mattered most. Their job was to capture supportive, respectful images of Charlotte, ensuring that even if the young princess stumbled, no cruel or humiliating pictures would reach the public. The sound system posed a bigger challenge. She couldn't tamper with it without raising suspicion. Instead, she discreetly set up a backup plan so her team could step in if Charlotte's microphone was sabotaged. Even with these safeguards, Anne knew she couldn't anticipate every trick. The plot had been carefully designed, and there were likely hidden traps waiting to unfold. She would need to stay vigilant for the entire day, ready to act at the slightest sign of danger, the day of the event. When the morning of the event finally came, London was bathed in sunshine, but Anne felt nothing but unease. She had spent the night arranging protections, yet the conspirators would surely be watching closely for any hint that their plan was discovered. Anne forced herself to appear calm, masking her dread behind royal composure. Charlotte arrived at the palace early, glowing with excitement as she practiced her speech once more. Seeing her niece's pure joy and nervous pride, unaware of the shadows surrounding her, broke Anne's heart. It only deepened her resolve to shield the child at any cost. As departure time neared, Anne noticed uneasiness among the staff. Some exchanged sharp looks and subtle gestures, as if communicating in code. She made a mental note to track their every move throughout the day. Riding with Charlotte and her security team, Anne chatted casually to keep the mood light, though her mind ran through every possible threat. She had countermeasures prepared for the obvious ones, but she knew the plotters were cunning and could still surprise her. Watching Charlotte's bright, hopeful face, Anne silently prayed nothing would dim the spark in her eyes. When they reached the venue, her fears grew stronger. Several arrangements had been altered once again. The stage looked different from the original plans, and several unfamiliar faces had joined the photography team. Anne quickly realized the plotters had made last-minute changes, likely to outmaneuver any precautions she had taken. Moments later, the first trap was triggered. As Charlotte stepped onto the stage, Anne noticed the lighting had been altered to throw sharp shadows across the child's face, making her appear smaller and more fragile. Photographers were positioned exactly where Anne had predicted, ready to capture unflattering shots. Yet Charlotte surprised them all. With natural grace, she adjusted her posture and smile, turning the harsh lighting to her advantage. Anne's chest swelled with pride. Her great niece showed an instinctive ability to adapt under pressure. But Anne knew the battle wasn't only on stage. it was also unfolding in the audience. Scattered among the guests were figures with influence over the press, waiting to decide what version of Charlotte's story the world would hear. Would she be painted as a nervous child or as a rising star of the monarchy? Anne kept watch as closely as she had during the performance, ensuring that every supportive voice was amplified, while whispers of criticism were quietly smothered before they could spread. In this way, she wasn't only protecting Charlotte's moment, she was shaping the narrative that would follow her for years. The flower presentation went smoothly, thanks to Anne's quiet planning. Though the bouquets had been made deliberately heavy, Charlotte managed them with ease, her warmth shining through as she greeted the children. Some photographers looked visibly annoyed, realizing they weren't getting the humiliating images they had hoped for. Then came the speech. As expected, the microphone had been tampered with, softening Charlotte's voice to sound weak and unsure. But Anne's backup system activated at once, with her trusted technician correcting the sound so seamlessly that the audience barely noticed. Charlotte began reading her altered script, filled with difficult words. Anne watched closely as the young princess calmly applied the techniques they had practiced, pausing, pronouncing carefully, and refusing to let the traps rattle her. Instead of faltering, she displayed remarkable confidence for her age. The conspirators' plan was collapsing. Each attempt to embarrass Charlotte only highlighted her composure and strength, leaving the photographers frustrated and empty-handed. By the time the event ended, Anne felt both relief and fury. Relief that Charlotte had escaped the worst of the sabotage, and anger that anyone would dare target a child so cruelly. Yet beneath her anger, Anne felt a renewed sense of purpose. Watching Charlotte's resilience on stage reminded her of why she had spent her life defending the institution, even when it demanded painful sacrifices. This child's strength had turned a trap into a triumph, and Anne knew it was now her responsibility to ensure such schemes never came close to succeeding again. The young princess carried herself with dignity, showing a calmness under pressure that even experienced royals would admire. But for Anne, the matter wasn't over. She understood that if the people behind the scheme weren't confronted, they would only try again in another way. She needed to send a clear signal, not just for Charlotte's sake, but for all the younger royals who might be targeted in the future. Anne's final stand. After Charlotte left the venue, Anne arranged to meet the main planners privately. She wanted no scenes, no unwanted attention, only a quiet but firm resolution. With evidence in hand, she was ready to hold them accountable. She did not raise her voice or resort to threats. Instead, she laid out the proof she had collected, records of their meetings, copies of communications, and details of the changes they had made to the event. Their denials quickly collapsed under the weight of her documentation, leaving them with no choice but to admit what they had done. They argued that their actions were meant to protect the monarchy, claiming that Charlotte and the younger royals threatened long-standing traditions. But to Anne, their reasoning was appalling. They had been willing to damage a child's confidence and possibly her future simply because they feared change. It was selfish, cruel, and unlike anything she had seen in decades of service. Anne now faced one of the hardest choices of her life. Exposing the group publicly would have ended their careers and perhaps led to criminal charges, but it would also drag Charlotte into a scandal, the very outcome the conspirators had sought. Instead, Anne chose a quieter path. She ensured they were removed from positions where they could influence royal affairs and reassigned far away from sensitive duties. Their actions were also recorded in private files, guaranteeing they would never again be trusted with responsibility close to the royal household. This decision, however, came at a personal price. The strain of the investigation and the secrecy surrounding it weighed heavily on her health and relationships. Some in the household thought she had gone too far. Others doubted her methods. The result left Anne more isolated than ever, carrying the knowledge of what had nearly happened without being able to speak openly about it. In the months that followed, Charlotte grew more confident, never realizing how close she had come to being undermined. Yet Anne understood that her role as protector was far from over. Trust within the family had been shaken, and her vigilance could never waver again. At the end of the day, life inside the palace isn't just about crowns and ceremonies, it's also about hidden battles most of us never witness. Princess Anne's quiet stand reminded us that even the youngest royals can become targets of other people's power games. By stepping in, she protected Princess Charlotte's spirit and showed that real strength sometimes comes in silence. But her tears revealed a harder truth. The royal world carries shadows few outside ever truly understand. Do you think Anne was right to keep this struggle private, or should the world know what really goes on behind those royal gates? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.